Welcome back, everybody. So as you can see, I am changing the name. I'm rebranding the podcast, and I'm changing the name. The name Monarchy now just really didn't sound like it fit. It wasn't very catchy. It didn't seem to fit. So I decided to sort of stick to the basics, and basically just for consistency purposes, the new name of the podcast is Roman America, as is my profile name on all my social media accounts. So that's the new name of the show, and there will be, it'll pretty much be the same format, but the name of the show is going to change. So yeah, that's pretty much what the show is going to be named from now on. So other than that, there shouldn't be too many major changes, but that's pretty much what's going to happen. So, but getting into the actual episode itself, I said on a post on Instagram, I said on Instagram that I sort of rushed the last episode, and that in episode 5, which is the current episode now, that I would go even further in depth into some of the stuff that I talked about on episode 4. So that's really what I'm just going to be doing today. So for starters, the Iran war is continuing. We are at day 27 as of midnight tonight, roughly, midnight Central Time, something like that. We will reach officially day 28, or week number 4. And yeah, once you reach the 1 month mark, that's when you got to start. Excuse me. That's pretty much when people's views start to change. When you start changing, I guess I call them time nouns. People start, like, for example, the conflict was expected originally to last, 4 days, roughly. And then, of course, once we hit the 1 week mark, and it became increasingly clear that this was going to last for weeks, then people started getting a little skeptical, I would say. And then, of course, people are going to get even more skeptical and opposed to this when we start using the term, using the noun months. And then, of course, pretty much everyone's going to be opposed to it once we get to the 1 year mark, which I don't know if it's going to get to that. Hopefully it won't, but, this is the fog of war. We really don't know. But, yeah, there are even people who are somewhat, either anti-Iran or pro-Israel. Some of them are starting to at least ask questions and get skeptical. Like, for example, I saw recently that Konstantin Kassin, who is the co-host one of the co-hosts of the Trigonometry podcast, he was very supportive of the 12-day war, but recently he has come out saying that he's at least skeptical of this war, because he seems to at least see the writing on the wall and acknowledge that America and Israel have no plan, particularly America. We really have no plan. We have no major plan, long-term plan, and Trump doesn't really have any exit strategy. And so, yeah, that'll cause opposition and skepticism. And so, I'll at least give him credit for that. But yeah, the war's continuing, and yeah, 3,000 to 4,000 troops, particularly Marines, that are aboard the USS Tripoli on their way to the Persian Gulf still. And reports are now saying that apparently it is possible Trump could call up another 10,000 troops to the Gulf region, which, that's the slippery slope of war, I guess. Who knows? But yeah, really, that, of course, would be bad, because this is already, of course, the most unpopular war in American history. I mean, the New York Times literally just did a poll where they showed the polling data for pretty much every American war, with the exception of Vietnam, ironically, at the start of the conflict. Weirdly enough, there is no exact polling data about public support for the Vietnam War at its beginning. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we just kind of stumbled into the war, and there was no official declaration or moment where we knew we were at war. The war just kind of kept escalating until everybody acknowledged that, yeah, we're in a war. And so, yeah, with the exception of Vietnam, pretty much every war in the past has polling data. And out of all of them, Iran is by far has the lowest polling numbers. World War II, it said, had 97% approval at the start of it. The war in Afghanistan, I think it was like 92 or 94, I think it was. Yeah, 94, 95. It was in the 90s for sure. The Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War of 1990 to 1991, Operation Desert Shield, and then eventually Operation Desert Storm, had about 82%. The Korean War had 75%. The Kosovo War, which most people seem to forget about, but the Kosovo War of 1998 1999 had 58% approval. The invasion of Grenada had 53% approval, so slightly more than half. And what was the other one I was remembering? Oh, yeah, the U.S. invasion of Panama in 1989, codenamed Operation Just Cause. That had 80% approval at the time. And yeah, for those who don't know, yeah, the invasion of Panama was, one of our Latin American operations in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was the operation where we disposed the military dictator, Manuel Noriega. So that's basically what happened there. And then, so yeah, 80%. Grenada had 53%. And then below that was the Libya intervention in 2011, had 47%. Iran has 41%. 41%. So to start out, it has the lowest approval numbers of any war at the beginning of the conflict. Obviously, every war becomes increasingly unpopular as it goes on. And what was the other one I was trying to mention? Oh, yeah, Iraq. The Iraq War in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. At the start of it, it had somewhere between 70 and 72%. So that's another one that had massive public support. And so, yeah, definitely to see. And so, point is, all of these had, with the exception of Libya, all of them had majority American support in one way or another. This one doesn't. Like, this one has the lowest numbers of any conflict. Since World War II, at least. And so it's going to get even more unpopular as time goes on. If you thought it was already bad enough, it's going to get worse. So there is that. And a lot of that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And then what else? Oh, yeah, Israel's pretty much preparing for a ground invasion of Lebanon. They're killing a bunch of people there, including a few more Catholic priests, I'm hearing, which is really unfortunate to hear. That's... yeah, really unfortunate to hear. But yeah, they're preparing for another ground assault in Lebanon. And already over 1,000 people in Lebanon have been killed. Already 1,000 have been killed, 3,000 have been injured. And I think somewhere between 300,000 and 1 million Lebanese civilians have already been displaced. I forget the exact numbers, but it's at least in the hundreds of thousands have already been displaced because of this war. And it's going to get only worse if Israel tries to launch a ground invasion into Lebanon. And they're not just going along the border. From what I hear, they're at least going to try to push as far as the southern bank of the Litani River, which is basically like the entire southern third of the country. And they obviously want to do it for the reason of either eliminating or at least disarming Hezbollah once and for all. But yeah, that's going to get worse. Like Lebanon, if some portions don't look like it already, which if you've seen the photos and videos, they have, but Lebanon's pretty much going to become the next Gaza, like in terms of destruction and damage and the toll on human life and all that stuff. So yeah, there seems to be no sign of the war slowing down there at all. And what was the third thing? Oh yeah, I'm a little surprised this hasn't happened yet, but apparently I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, assuming they're not too weak, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the Houthis down in Yemen decided to join the war and decided to start attacking ships in the Red Sea again. Obviously they did that after the start of the war in Gaza, and they did that a little bit around this time last year, actually. But we haven't really heard too much news about that, and I'm a little surprised that at the beginning of the month they didn't join, but I would not be surprised if at some point they just decided, yeah, why not? Why not open this war to three more to a third front? Why not? So I wouldn't be surprised if they joined, but I haven't really heard any news about that. But yeah, that's, I guess, something to look out for, something to keep an eye on. But yeah, there's that's going on. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the Iran updates that I'm hearing about. Not really much else. I think today was a little bit of a slow news day. But and then and then the second thing, so the second topic I wanted to expand on a little bit for tomorrow, that I talked about in episode 4, was that there are TSA agents. Excuse me, TSA agents. ICE agents. Sorry, my goodness, there are ICE agents at the airports now they're apparently taking charge of the TSA lines. And if you've seen them, the TSA lines are crazy. I mean, there are people who wait like 3 hours for a flight, if they make their flight at all. Many of the flights have been delayed and canceled and all that stuff, but there are a lot of airports around the country now, like Houston and Memphis, I think, and other airports and all that stuff. And unfortunately, this is going to come back to haunt Trump because, one, the long wait lines, but also, number 2, I'm not really sure how much that's going to affect the deportation numbers. And I feel like, unfortunately, this is another scenario, kind of like Minneapolis, where he's just going to chicken out and withdraw eventually. So, yeah, that's a bit of a complicated situation. But, I mean, I would support it continuing if we see very good, very massive results of, apprehensions of illegal immigrants at airports. So, we'll see, but I feel like, this is going to be another Minneapolis. Like, I feel like this isn't going to last long. This will last maybe a month, and then ICE is going to quit and withdraw. So there's that. And then there were some other topics to talk about. Oh, yeah, there was a debate going on, and I watched a good chunk of it on Wednesday. There was a debate going on among some high school conservatives about the Israel-Iran war. And look, I don't want to bash high schoolers too much because, I don't expect them to know everything. I mean, I myself don't claim to be an expert, but I was listening to, a lot of them. There were 2 or 3 of them, and their defenses for the Iran war, their reasons why they support it. And a lot of it, again, I don't blame them solely for this. I don't put the specific blame on them, but I just heard a lot of, Hasbara talking points from these people, whether it be around whether it be around the Israel lobby's influence on the war beginning, or the ins and outs of the Iranian nuclear program, and stuff like that. And also, one of the things that really got me, one of the things that I thought was so cringe that I just rolled my eyes over, was the constant World War II references. I mean, it really does annoy me how much World War II has been sort of deified and worshipped as like the one legitimate war in American history and all that stuff, which anyone who's ever either read his book or listened to his commentary, either read the book or listened to the commentary of like Pat Buchanan, the Catholic paleoconservative who ran for president a couple of times. Anyone who's ever listened to that would know that, and by the way, Pat's a very smart guy on the issue of World War II. Anyone would know that there's a lot more nuance to that war than people think it is, Not exactly, it's not to say that everything about it is completely wrong, but there's a lot more nuance and context to it that people don't seem to realize, And so, I don't know, I kept listening to these constant World War II references, and I really didn't like it. I really thought it was just kind of silly. And, I guess in a debate, in debate terms, I also thought it was kind of sloppy. Personally, I just thought it was kind of sloppy. And, I guess all I can say as a listener is that, I did expect better. I sort of expected it to go a little bit better. And, look, I understand why, and look, again, I have a slightly different worldview. I've got different sources that I learn my things from, but, I don't know. I guess maybe I should do an episode at some point explaining the in-depths of the Iranian nuclear program or the histories of war in the Middle East. Because I always hear I heard so many talking points in that episode. Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. You know what I mean? Israel is our greatest ally in the Middle East. Blah 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 blah. Like there was almost not a single Hasbara talking point that I felt like I couldn't refute. And so I guess I was really, in a sense, disappointed. I mean, and by the way, most of the debate was a 3-on-1. You know what I mean? The one girl who was, seemed to be fighting for her life. She was very, it was very hard to like watch that. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I guess at some point I should just DM I guess at some point I should just DM to the people in that debate and say, "Hey, do you want to talk about this?" Or, "Hey, can I give you some tips? Can I give you some sources to prove that these claims are incorrect?" I don't know. I feel like that's what's going to happen in some way. And so, again, I don't blame them or hold them solely responsible for any of that stuff, but it does just goes to show you how powerful propaganda can be. It really goes to show you how powerful certain narratives can be when certain people are pushing it, and how much motivation they have to push it, and the reasons behind them pushing it. So maybe I should finish the debate. I watched a good portion of it. I will say I watched at least about a third of it, and that entire first third of it wasn't really. Again, it was kind of cringe. I felt like, okay, I gotta quit at some point because this just is going nowhere. It's going nowhere, and it's really not something that, it's really, nothing's new. I mean, the lines I heard in that debate were, none of it was new. A lot of it's the same stuff that I've heard before. And so at some point I really should, I don't know, I guess maybe I should finish it, but I guess not. So, but, yeah, so I guess that's the just in-depth of what I was saying. And, I guess, what was the fourth thing I wanted to say? Oh yeah, so this was 3 days ago, March 24th, but, excuse me. Yeah, so this was 3 days ago. This was March 24th. Cause I'm recording on the 27th right now, but, March 24th was, anyone who knows anything about foreign policy will know the significance of March 24th, which is that 27 years ago on that day is the day that NATO began bombing Serbia. Which, I mentioned the Kosovo War earlier and how it had slight majority American approval going into it, but that really was an unnecessary war that America and NATO should not have fought. I mean, all the Yugoslav wars in general, especially the two biggest ones, of course, that we were involved in, though, were Bosnia and Kosovo. But yeah, so during the Kosovo War, it was March 24th, 1999, that NATO began bombing Serbia. And until the end of the war on June 10th, so over the next 2.5 months, roughly, approximately 2,000 Serbian civilians were killed and another 20,000 were injured. And the UN, I think it was the UN Security Council, needed to sign off on NATO taking those types of military actions, like bombings and stuff like that. Like, NATO needed UN approval, and they didn't do it. So, no matter how you slice it, it was a very unfortunate incident, and it was very unnecessary, very unjust set of circumstances. I mean, it really does suck, the amount of people that were killed in that bombing. All of those bombings, really, especially in Belgrade, though. I mean, the amount of destruction and damage that was inflicted on the civilian population, it was not pretty at all. And, the Yugoslav wars are sort of, Bosnia and Kosovo are sort of forgotten wars in American history. They're sort of forgotten wars that we've been involved in, but yeah, they were not very fun wars. They were pretty violent. I mean, Bosnia was a very bloody, very violent war. And so, things are still tense to this day in that region. Obviously things have cooled down, things have simmered down, but ethno-religious tensions are still very tense in that region, in the Balkans today, whether it be in Serbia, whether it be between Serbia and Kosovo, or within Bosnia, because Bosnia, of course, is a very Balkanized, very diverse sort of country with a lot of different groups. And so, but yeah, so that happened, 27 years ago on Tuesday, and it's really something we should never forget. It was really a stain on NATO's legacy. It was a stain on the American military's legacy. Overall, it was just not fun to watch. So, yeah, never forget what happened in Serbia. I'll never forget that for certain after learning about it. And so, yeah. So that's pretty much what I want to talk about in this episode. I think I've been ranting long enough. But yeah, so, in conclusion, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, smash the like button and hit the subscribe button, because, I want my podcast to be, I want to increase its reach and out to everybody, its reach and its influence. And, it's very small right now, but I would like it to increase at some point. And so, yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, maybe even share it if you want. From now on, again, it is no longer known as the Monarchy Now podcast. That is dead. It is now simply known as the Roman America podcast. And, so yeah, watch it on YouTube or on Rumble. If you watch it on Rumble, I know more people watch it on YouTube, but it is available on Rumble as well. And I will make it available on Spotify at some point when I finish setting up the link tree. And I will, of course, promote this on Instagram. But yeah, so if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next episode sometime next week. Preferably Monday, but sometime next week. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all in the next episode.